Welcome to the Virtuous American Podcast. We're back for another episode, stronger and better than ever. Today we're going to be discussing a few interesting topics. We're going to go ahead and go over real quick just because, we don't want people to forget that this stuff's still happening. We are at 114,000 deaths of COVID-19. Today was 926 plus. So it's no big deal. Things are going great. The shops are back open. Casinos are popping. They're rolling. People are, thinking that masks are unnecessary again. People are, seem to be letting their guards down. And so it's interesting. That's very interesting that's happening. But, I think at the same time, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about today was about one of the things that my friend and Donald Dunham says in the Kremlin Target, USA, where he talks about what one of the biggest problems was when writing his book, right? And it's that that difficulty was in writing in this is that there was so much coming at one time, so much happening. It's just saturation of information that it was hard to disseminate and place or even to know where to begin your complaints, right? Because there's just so much disaster after disaster. The dominoes keep falling, right? So it created this difficulty for him to be able to choose when to start his arguments, right? And this is the same thing that's happening right now. And there's, to quote the Del Rey Misfits, right? Blessed be they, oh holy Del Rey Misfits. They said that the conveyor belt of shit just keeps rolling. And once a person absorbs, all of a sudden they see, all of a sudden there's a nude, scene. Oh, it's nothing. There's so much information. There's the fact that the Senate won't do anything. There's the fact that Trump just blamed Antifa for for a police officer pushing down and hurting an old man, right? For in plain sight of a camera, letting them lay there, laying in his blood, right? Head shattered. And the big pushes forward. He goes ahead and he harasses Australian journalists. He, beats their guts in. He shoots tear gas on the American people. And the Republicans are silent. They're quiet, complicit. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to bring on my Minister Mike to go ahead and help us out today, to help me go ahead and have a conversation and see what he makes of the conveyor belt of shit that Donald Trump keeps feeding the trough of. That man is a bullshit machine, the likes of which we have never seen before. A biblically epic shit talker. What do you think?
He is the I think he is so 100% efficient at bullshit. Like, if we could turn out green energy with the efficiency that Donald Trump turns out bullshit, I mean, global warming wouldn't be an issue. Like, we could all take a page from the efficiency of the garbage that comes out of his mouth, because he is 100% consistent on, like you said, the shit train ain't slowing down for nobody.
I just took your formula that you just handed us, and I just crunched the numbers, right? And from what I'm seeing here is that if we converted all that energy, we could basically power all of Africa, for 10 decades, So I mean, you're absolutely right. It's insane, And yet, this is one of the very interesting things, though, and this is another one of the big topics that I wanted us to hit on today, and it's because it's such a this topic is such a critical aspect of everything that happens, right? So it's imagination, right? How elastic, how flexible, how able are you, or as a person, or are we as Americans? How powerful is our imagination, and how filled with ideas is it from multiple of dozens of unregistered, unfiltered sources, right? That are just influencing us, right? And creating an imaginary picture in our head that only we can see, right? And so even just thinking about the word imagination, it's almost beyond imaginable some of the controversies that Donald Trump does, right? You sometimes we think, no, there's no way that he's going to go ahead and open fire on the American people. There's no way that he's going to go ahead and stand up for this guy. There's no way that guy's going to go ahead and get bailed out for $975,000, right? There's no way that the courts are going to try to throw out the Flynn case. There's no way that Barr could go ahead and support the fact that they moved the protesters, the peaceful protesters, with a barrage of violence, and for the president to stand there with a Bible, not his Bible. He says it's not his Bible, it's a Bible, and then to hold it upside down for a photo op, to try to bathe himself in the power that Jesus Christ really does have, in the power that his imagery, that his metaphor contains. And he tried to go ahead and rape it. He raped it by abusing of spiritual and sacred texts, sacred locations. He abused it in a way that's almost diabolical, right? Because to be able to do something in that regard, where you're mocking, not only are you unaware, not only are you just ignorant, but you know what you're doing. It creates a different shadow on the image.
To me, it was always
right?
it was funny. I don't remember if this was on a previous podcast or if this was just in a personal conversation. I don't know if your viewers are aware of that. I mean, that we obviously discuss things outside of, the podcast scenario. It's not like we just exist in the singularity of the podcast. But I believe it was you that said that Donald Trump, you firmly believe that if Donald Trump was holding a baby and somebody opened fire on him, that he would put the baby in front of the path of the bullets, which is funny because to me, that's exactly what he's doing with Jesus Christ right now. He's basically like sitting in a booth with Jesus, and all of a sudden, somebody's opened fire ideologically, and he's like, "No, Jesus, take the hit, man." He's like, "You can come back in 3 days. This is my one shot."
That's right. But that's right, and that's abuse. That's abuse of sacred objects.
I think that American politicians in general have always had a undercurrent of disingenuousness.
You show me somebody holding a Bible.
But yeah,
that and anybody, and that it's so obvious that they don't mean it.
There's
and where they hold it upside down.
That's what I'm saying, is that there's always been an undercurrent of disingenuousness that's existed in American politics, of course, but he's just taken it to a whole new level. I mean, how do you make this okay, so I claim, let's say you're Donald Trump, right, and you are fronting this idea that you're a good Christian, you believe in Jesus Christ, he's your Lord and Savior and this and that, and Jesus's main message was of peace, love, tolerance. I mean, you could just pull up a quick Google search and find, I don't remember, I think the one thing, and again, I'm paraphrasing from the Bible, of course, the biblical story, but I think the one time Jesus was aggressive was when there were bankers in the church, trying to take advantage of everybody. I think that was the only time. But how do you go for this photo op to show that you're this peace-loving, tolerant man who is, I'm honoring my Lord and Savior, whose main message is of tolerance and peace. And on the way there are peaceful protesters blocking your path. So you order your military to open fire on them with rubber bullets and tear gas and flashbangs, and have people go and beat them with nightsticks, so that you could go take a photo, a pretty photo with your family to remind everybody how much you love Jesus and how much you are an advocate for peace. Like, how do you, like, it baffles the mind sometimes when you like have to sit there and think about like the level of propaganda that is.
And that's why I bring it back. That's why I bring it back to imagination, right? Because as when we're all boys, and little girls, we're all thinking, one day I want to be a princess, and I want, that, or I want to be a prince, and when I put on this, it makes me faster, and when these shoes make me quicker, and this and that, all this imaginary power that we carry, right? Where we say this stick is a gun, or this wall is a steel barricade that is going to protect, whatever it is, right? When that gets applied to adult mentality in political, which is, people, it's almost, it's funny, but it's almost like a pendulum almost, or it's almost like a total reversion, right? Almost like we've traumatized ourselves by thinking, by telling ourselves over and over and over again that politics is not important. And now all of a sudden, someone abused that, and manipulated it, and all of a sudden it's the people who have grown up with that belief their imagination is being messed with by someone who understands that politics is important, and making them think like, oh, all this ability of him to be able to move these people, to hurt these people, to arrest all these people, to press the maximum charges on them, to declare Antifa, the anti-fascist, a terrorist
which he has no authority to do that I'm aware of.
It just boggles the mind, because a normal, sane human being, can know that there's certain things. When you tell me, hey, Michael, I saw an orange dragon, and it had stars on its back. It had 34 stars. Okay, I mean, I think that it's within reason for you to say, hey, man, maybe that's not 100% true. Maybe he means it metaphorically. Maybe that's not true. But it's beyond imagination, right? Sometimes to these scenarios that he puts us in, and I think that it's on purpose. You know what I mean? Because the next part that I wanted us to discuss that was really critical, which, I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand, right? Is the idea, and it's this was more because, now these two are more because in business, in every single business course that you could take, from Grant Cardone to Ty Lopez to everybody that you to think and grow rich, right? They all have, in my opinion, a through line that is all about mindset, all right? And when your imagination, when you have an ability to be aware of your mindset, I think that what happens then is that you can apply imagination to that mindset, right? But there's people whose imagination doesn't allow themselves to see that image, to see that stick as a fire weapon that can blow 32 gauge, cylindrical bullets, slugs that, freeze a person on instant contact, right? No, there's people who can't imagine themselves as being a CEO, as being a business owner, as being the manager, as being a person who can demand more for their time when they work as an employee. It's the same thing. It's the same thing that makes a person go from thinking all about me to thinking we, right? It's a mindset, and the imagination kind of can either confine or stretch the mindset, in my opinion, right? And so it's really interesting to see how, and it's really, devilish, in my opinion, when someone who understands or has built up their entire business on fake it till you make it, right? but loser Donald losing all that money after losing all those things, he still managed to win. And that is something that people, whether you are on his side or not, you have to acknowledge, or we will not defeat. And what he's doing is that he's using imaginary tactics to warp the mindset of the American people. And I think it's really interesting the way in which the imagination, for example, of the drawing of the meme, right, as Mike calls it, the meme of life. When you introduced that term to me, I was like, that's a really it's a really powerful way of thinking of things, right? Because
like an idea that we've been sold. Yeah, just for your viewers' sake, because I don't know if they were there for that conversation, but essentially what I was getting at was that we have this idea of what life is because we're shown that by whether it's our parents or the news or the media or whatever. We're sold this meme, which comes from the word memetics. Don't just think, obviously you're aware of this, but don't just think, for your viewers that it's like, like a cat photo with some subtext. Like memetics has to do with the ideas and how they propagate and move around and travel and things like that. But anyways, go on.
No, explain further because I think that this is absolutely critical, right? Because so this is one of the things that I picked up from, not necessarily picked up, but this is one of the ideas that I've been really studying up on ever since I found out about it in Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. And the reason is because in Metal Gear Solid Sons of Liberty, what they were doing is that they had a program designed to censor certain information, right? Designed to wipe out certain memes, certain articles, certain words off of the internet, because in their opinion, that it was believed that, or at least in the video games belief, the Patriots said that they were an idea, right? They were the reason that we carry ourselves the way we do. So the way you said it, the meme of America for a long time was that we stand on the right side of history. And for a long time, it was that we are noble, that we are caring, that we leave no man behind, that we care for our neighbor, that we are our sister's keeper, that we are our brother's keeper, right? All these different fundamental American beliefs were the mimetic of life, and after a while, it was such a meme that it was laughable, right? It became a comedy almost, right? It became like they joked about us, but now the meme doesn't match with our belief of that meme doesn't match with our reality.
And I personally, if I may, I personally believe that part of the reason that Donald Trump was able to get the election in his favor and get the presidency is because he sold us this meme of America as a failed state. I mean, and you can see that in his campaign. I mean, he clearly states, what was the slogan? It was "Make America Great Again." So the very implication of that implies that we weren't great. He sold us this meme of a failed state, that like everything was so bad. And now, I mean, we look at where we are. It's less about politics for me and more about just if you take time to just look at the reality. I mean, we're closer now to being a failed state, in my opinion, than we ever were before he became elected. I mean, we have a plague where essentially where 100,000 people are dead, and that was with social distancing, mind you. So who knows what's going to really happen to the numbers
with our protests and all that.
And now there's police the police are violating rights. Of course, that's always been a thing, though. That's never been something new. But I mean, I also don't believe that's ever been actively and openly condoned by the state and vocalized like that. Not by the person running our country. At previous presidents, it's like what Mattis said. I know he doesn't prefer the term Mad Dog Mattis, and I had to like bite my tongue there for a second, because I know he prefers to think of himself as more of like a warrior monk, which is honestly, I mean, either way, not wrong. But
it's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, it shows. It's amazing that somebody whose job it is to take life for the country can find such an appreciation for life that like he doesn't want to be associated with death. He'd rather be associated with, being an honorable man. Mm-hmm. But anyways, it's like he said though, Trump is the first president that we've had who doesn't even try or even pretend to try to unite everybody. He is so set on dividing us and condoning, the institutionalized racism that exists in the police, which the institutionalized racism has existed for a very long time in the police, obviously, because of, if you go back to, slavery times, unfortunately, which is not a great part of our history, but it is what it is. We have to deal with the past. But if you go back to that, we had all these laws about runaway slaves and, Jim Crow after the emancipation and everything. Yeah. And it's, people forget, well, who enforced those laws? Who were the ones that, when somebody broke it was the police. The police enforced. It was their job for a very long part of our history to enforce institutionalized racism. And we've changed I don't want to say outwardly we've tried to change the tone over the years, but clearly, that system itself is it needs an overhaul, perhaps even from the ground up. I watched a police training video the other day that where this guy was, cops would go to this seminar, and it was called warrior training. Yeah. And he was so focused on the taking a life part of the job. He was so focused. He's like, you have to be ready to kill. And he's like, and once you kill, you're a predator. And he's like, when you're a predator, it takes a predator to hunt other predators. And there's something very disturbingly wrong to me about police officers viewing themselves as predators, because you then you begin to look at everybody else as prey. It's an ideological thing. Right. And I think that, like I said, and coming full circle back to my original point, now that we have a president who is not only not even pretending to say that like this kind of stuff is bad, but actively encouraging it, you have a real recipe for a huge problem. And obviously, here we are.
And that's what I mean as that. And so then we take a look back at what Donald Dunham said about the Kremlin's attempts to propagandize. And what is propaganda? Propaganda is imagery, it's storytelling, it's narrative controlling, right? And the idea of the Russians has always been subversively because let's be honest, people, go take a look at the Russian median income, and it's worse than Mexico's. Go take a look at the per capita income, and it's worse than Mexico's. Go take a look at the savings that each of those countries have, and it's worse than even it's worse than Mexico's. That's all I got to say, because it's much larger, and it produces a lot less. And this isn't the Russian people's fault. This is the Russian government's fault. This is the Kremlin's fault, because they are so fully convinced that their whole purpose is to defeat us, that they don't mind if their people suffer. And it's obvious, because if not, they would have fixed that. Because if not, they would have actually allowed for there to be businesses to bloom. But there aren't. The reality is that they just aren't. And so Donald Dunham says that the idea of the propaganda is to one, destabilize us from within, right? So, and Joseph Stalin said that a bear that does your bidding is more dangerous than an enemy at the gates. Okay? Because sometimes when they are there, they can cause such devastation to the image of who we are that it ruins and it completely changes the meme of America. Now America.
When it comes to preparing for your financial future,
There's no better time to start than today. My mission is to help create financial peace of mind and guide my clients on a path to a successful retirement. Click on the link below and schedule an appointment for us to sit down and chat. Now we've become a police state that is feared by our own Australian journalists, our own Australian friends. We're mistrusted by the Mexicans and the Mexican people. We are loved by the Brazilian Bolsonaro, who's a crazy lunatic who doesn't believe COVID is real while it ravages his people. The Filipinos have asked us to withdraw our troops. We have now withdrawn troops from Germany. We just we abandon our allies in Kurdistan, in Syria. We have done all these maneuvers and all these embarrassing things that have just been so counterproductive and so weakening of America. And it's insane for us to think that he just, and it's how you said, it's all about the mentality, the warrior training, the warrior killer. Now you've got the mind of a killer. It's the same kind of belief of the mindset, imagination, distortion of memetics, right? And the Russians have just been trying to warp our idea, our mimetic of America, and honestly, they've achieved so much. It's devastating to us.
I think that I think the church incident speaks a lot to the situation in America, and with the American government, and also the differences between the American government and the Russian government, because that whole idea of removing a peaceful protest so that you can go take a photo op. And just to hand it out there, just so that obviously, I'm not appearing biased. I am aware that there are looters and people going around and doing those types of things, and unfortunately taking advantage of the peaceful movement that is transpiring. And there's always going to be it doesn't really matter what your movement is. Honestly, there's always going to be a certain portion of people who are going to take advantage of it. It doesn't matter whether it's black, white, purple. I mean, it doesn't really matter. But all I can say is I wish the protesters luck, and try to support them in any way that I can. But going back to the point, I do think that it speaks a lot of volume between the differences between our two states, because I could totally see Vladimir Putin doing something very similar to that. The difference is he has such a stranglehold on his media that they would never report that, or they would try to spin it. Whereas thankfully we have the media in this country where it's not perfect, and it certainly is incredibly partisan at times. But at least that story got out, at least people get to see, sure, people get to see the photo op and they get to see the pictures that Trump, the image that he wants to present. But thankfully, we also get to see how he got those images. That's honestly, I'm so grateful for the media that we do have, the flawed media system that it is. It's at least we have somebody out there, willing to say hey, this is happening. And I'm grateful for that, honestly.
So I think that the one of the main goals here, and the reason that I am so critical of the Russians, is because there is proof, and there has been former ways in which they have manipulated even their own people, right? And we have to go ahead and like I say, right? It's you have to give credit where it's due. The Russians are a country that has been around for much longer than we have. They really do have cybernetic teachings to that in a way that are more advanced than us, because of the fact that they are older than us. They have have more human control strategies than we do. That's just the reality. We all the way from Pavlov to the other Russian psychoanalysts that exist, right? So then we take a look at modern times, right, at what's happening right now, and the name Vladislav Surkov is critical here because what he did is that he used to be a performing he used to be like a playwright. He used to make some like really like kind of like Broadway shows, and he was hired by Putin to propagandize his presidency, right? I think that another thing that Americans forget is how long Putin has been in office for. He has been in office for nearly more than a few decades, and nearly 2 decades. And in America, we are confused when somebody does it for longer than 8 years. And so his grasp on power hasn't been fast; it's been slow and steady. The media. So here's where I think that it's so critical for us to be aware of these things, is because one of the things that Vladislav Surkov was so famous of doing is muddy waters, right? And basically because he believes in what is called non-linear warfare, and which means that he will attack in any way, in any capacity, on any field in which it hurts you, right? And so one of the things that he did in Russia was that when Putin was in power, when Putin was ascending power for his initial 3 years, on his first year, they had an attack, a terrorist attack. He handled it, he propagandized it. But the next one, the one that allowed him to hold power, were the protest movements. So Vladislav Surkov organized 3 different movements on 3 consecutive days. He organized a women's movement, a white nationalist movement, and a anti-government movement, all back to back to back. And these protests and these rallies were massive. But then he let it be known that it was him that was doing it, right? He told people that he was the one who was pulling the strings on everybody. So therefore, you guys are kind of foolish because you just go with whatever you're told. You don't even research. You don't even research what you stand with. You all of a sudden, so all of a sudden you're all gonna black out your screens, and all of a sudden everybody's gonna go ahead and hashtag Black Lives Matter and self-censor. All of a sudden, the slogan, defund the police, that no Democrat has ever said before, that no Southern black man like Jim Clyburn has ever said, who's a representative, a legendary, has ever, no one stands for that. No one stands for those crazy slogans, and but yet then they muddy the waters by throwing in instigators, right? So you call them looters, and even that, in my opinion, is a weakening of the protest. And because these are not looters, these are looters that are created out of instigation. So it's one doesn't happen without the other, in my opinion. These instigators that are dressed up, see, because here's what they want. They want the Latinos and the black minorities to make their white allies feel unwanted and unwelcome. They want our Antifa brothers. They want our brothers who are long-haired, the hippies, the love and peace guys. They want us to make them feel like even them speaking is it's too offensive all of a sudden, as if, oh no, why are you even posting Black Lives Matter? You're white, and instead of saying, hey, thanks for understanding, right? All of a sudden they're, you're just trying to patronize, right? And they want our white allies to feel like they belong more with Trump. You know what I'm saying? and that's why, in my opinion, when I see even people when you see these instigators who are not uh, white Antifa, they're white supremacists. All right, these are white supremacists. All right, white Antifa would be there protecting everybody else. And I'm not saying that you are Antifa, but I'm sure that if you didn't have the circumstances of your family, you might be joining up and helping out because in Black Drab, but in a positive way, and for Antifa, not as a white supremacist, right? But they want to muddy the waters, and they want every person who dresses in black and is fighting for the black minorities and white men and the Latinos to not want to do that. You know what I'm saying? And that's why that's why it's like we can't even pretend. I don't believe that. Those are not normal people. Those are instigators because they've done this before. And then I'm sorry, I know I've been ranting on, but then no, but it's just because this is really important. I'm sorry.
No, please continue.
But then after this, they updated it, right? So the maneuver of the Black Lives Matter hashtag, right? And the blacking out of the screens. You know, that is such a genius psychoactive trick, because all that it is just, hey, share this with the hashtag and then black out your screen. So that instead of you showing all the and then where does this recommendation come from that people shouldn't have their phones when they're protesting? Where does this recommendation come from that people shouldn't be recording while they're protesting? That they shouldn't be going live on Facebook while they're protesting? Where does that come from? It doesn't make any sense. It's counterintuitive. It's counter to what they want to accomplish, right? Because they're going to arrest you in either way. They're going to arrest you either way, so why not have the evidence on your phone? Why not be on Facebook Live in front of everybody? Should have their phone out, Facebook Live. There should be a wall of phones recording and saying, we're here peacefully, guys. We're here peacefully and we're moving forward. We're on Facebook Live, all right? So that means that the whole world is watching. But no, you see these recommendations and these things saying, no, leave your phones, don't bring them with you. You know, they're gonna find out who you're talking to. They're gonna arrest you and they're gonna ask you for your ID, and they're gonna find out either way. So it's counterintuitive to do those things, in my opinion. Then we add to it the next propaganda attack that is against us. That blackout, like I said, the censoring of the videos. So now any of the people who were brave enough to not listen to the recommendations that were given by a so-called Black Lives Matter, who knows who is the leader of Black Lives Matter? Nobody. So the recommendations that are supposedly out there of black out this, do this, are twisted even a little bit, and all of a sudden, you have in addition to the people who are already leaving their phones behind, you have all of that loss of content. Then you add to it the fact that people are censoring the videos that are coming in, and that allows for Facebook, who owns Instagram, to go ahead and erase the videos showing anything that is not a blackout screen, making it appear as if though nothing is happening, making the news collapse on itself. It is such a genius and cheap, powerful move that people would say even like, no, bro, that's impossible. Social media is not that important. It's just Twitter. It's just Facebook. But it's more important than that. And then we add to it, right, the muddy waters, right? So now they want us to say, hey, man, I don't know where I stand, right? We don't know, because on Instagram they started releasing, hey, protest is going to be happening here in this location, and all of a sudden you would have the NAACP say, hey, there's white supremacists that are faking and organizing rallies at CNN buildings and at other locations that have nothing to do with what they're doing, and don't show up. But it's so simple to create an Instagram profile, to go on Spark or Canva or wherever the hell it is you want, make a quick little graphic and trick the world. And that's why I remember you were super confused. You were upset because it's like they were destroying the CNN buildings. They were attacking these because like
less upset and more like, you know, like if I personally,
yeah.
and by the way, just for the sake of conversation, I think that just to summarize the point that I believe you are trying to make is that with the way that certain members of the Kremlin have taken advantage of protest movements in the past and used that current to feed their own agenda. To me, what it is that you're saying is that because of the decentralized nature of the protests that are occurring right now. I mean, thankfully, there's protests across the world right now, and you know, it's about time that the people of the world finally stood up and said, you know, enough's enough, and I'm grateful for that. But what you are saying, to the best of my knowledge, is that because of the decentralized nature of these movements, and because they're all based on social media and things like that, that they can be taken advantage of.
Yes.
And just I just wanted to bring that point full circle.
Thank you.
But and yeah, that was the you brought that point up to me about the protest at CNN, and it really did get me wondering, because if I was organizing a protest to you know, against established, you know, racism and things like that, it would not be CNN would not be my target. Fox News,
Right.
The Fox News building would be the first on my list.
The Sinclair News building.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, or the you know, anywhere that the ALEC corporation meets. ALEC is a for people who don't know, ALEC is basically like a lobbying organization that, like, for example, the prison industry is people are like, well, why is the prison industry so big? Well, because of ALEC. ALEC is a lobbying organization that has lobbied for the prison industry for a very long time. But things like that, yeah. And it's the same. ALEC is also the same reason right now that, for example, people, I don't know if people have noticed over the years, but like you have this trend of like a lot of people who are on probation more, where it's like, you know, they have these work release probations where you go work during the day and then at night you come back and, you know, you go back to jail or whatever. And people are like, well, that's, you know, some people are happy about that because it's like, well, at least these guys get to go back and contribute, you know, and they can make some money and do this stuff. And there's a point to you know, those people have somewhat of a point. But I mean, that is all the result of ALEC transitioning from lobbying for the prison industry for the parole industry. So it's not actually a movement, a shift that's genuine. And I think that's what you're saying, is that like there's so many people willing to take advantage of anger and movements and use them for their own agenda. And I really wouldn't put it past, honestly. I don't really have any clear-cut evidence to that I could be like, oh yeah, the Trump administration is doing that. I do know, however, that when you're in times of war, you unite your allies and supporters and you divide your enemies. And I think it says a lot if you look at the people who Trump is trying to unite and the people who he's trying to divide.
And I think I take that back to mindset, right? I take that back to mindset, where what is Donald Trump's mindset? You know what I'm saying? Like, so you take into consideration the schemery that I just proposed, right? And you consider who is Donald Trump and what is his mindset, right? and it's like, you know, it kind of makes my hypothesis kind of seem a little more believable, you know, because the guy will do anything to hold on to power. He'll kiss any ring. He'll do whatever he needs to. And you know, it's also really interesting that we bring it back to mindset, because like you said, the police officers, right? They're the mindset of like, hey, we're warriors. You know, when I was in the College of Southern Nevada for a semester, basically, they brought in a police officer and they were like, hey, you know, we were like, how do you? They were like all the college kids. They were like, hey, how do you deal with the stress? Like, aren't you scared about coming home and this and that? And the police officer says, well, that's why that we always get told before we go out to go on patrol. We say this: you come home, not them. And I laughed. I was like, because I wasn't sure if it was a joke or if he. And no, he like no one else laughed. They were like, oh wow, that's so cool. That's such a strong mindset, you know. And in my head, I just laughed because the responsibility that comes with being a police officer is that there's inherent risk, right? And but to say that the suspect, the person who might be guilty, right? Because everybody's presumed innocent, right, until proven guilty. It's like all of a sudden these cops just want to be the judge, jury, and executioner, you know, because of the mindset, like you said, the warrior mindset of, hey, you know, you're a killer, you're a predator. And it's so funny that you said that freaking phrase. You know what? In the show that I'm watching, Baki, which everyone should watch on Netflix, is freaking awesome. The main villain is Baki's father, right? And in it, he goes ahead and he literally calls his son, finally, you're ready to be my prey, right? And everyone's like, oh, he's not joking. Like he's kind of like you know, and it's a different mindset, right? Of when you say, hey, you're not just a protector, you're not just a vigilant, you know, you're not just a, what do they call them, guardians, you know, you're
protector. Yeah. Pick a word.
You're a warrior. You're a fucking killing machine. You know,
which very much contrasts with this idea of protecting and serving. This meme that they sell us, and it's a classic case of an illusion that is failing. You know, it's one thing, like personally, like when the protests, with the not the protests, but with the people who are looting and the people who are, you know, doing those stuff. So, you know, I watched a clip of Tucker Carlson, and can I speak candidly for a second? Use some dirty language.
You should always speak candidly.
What a fucking asshole! I fucking hate Tucker Carlson. I wish he would go back to wearing a bow tie. I mean, I'm sure he's a beautiful human being deep down, but his stage presence is just so phony and disingenuous. What a prick! But outside of that,
he's trying to get that Trump 10. You see?
Yeah. That orange. That oh yeah. But all that aside, like I said, I'm sure he's a beautiful person deep down. But I believe that about everybody. But when it comes to the you know, like the violence that is occurring on the protests, not the protests, but the looting and the rioting side, because I don't want to conflate the two, because they are two separate things, and people forget that sometimes. First of all, what I would say on that is, well, look at the police right now. Look at the amount of violence that they're exhibiting towards the peaceful protesters. Have you noticed, maybe it's just me, but from what I've seen, it seems like the police are getting violence with the peaceful protesters and not so much with the looters. Every clip I've seen of the police getting violence has always been against, like I watched a guy speak out, and you know, at a protest. He wasn't even using a megaphone. He just had his phone up and he was recording and he was saying something. I watched 3 police officers come over and mace him, mace a whole crowd, and drag him out. And it's like, so when people are, you know, you can condemn looting and you can condemn all these things, the violence that's happening to these poor communities all day. And I don't mean poor as in financially. I mean poor as in, like, I sympathize with them and I totally understand. And that's the thing. You can condemn the violence that's occurring, but if you don't understand why it's occurring, you know, why are people burning down Targets, and you know, honestly, who gives a shit about Target anyways? But if you don't understand why that community is so angry, you haven't been paying attention. And
or you just refuse to care almost. And because I mean, just it's literally just put yourself in their shoes. Okay, your son is with a BB gun, and all of a sudden a cop car pulls up. 2 seconds later, the cop is so scared he shoots, dead. Tamir Rice gone. You know. Then you see now a 9-minute and 40-second video of a man having his, being crushed by 3 dudes, right? And in plain camera, looking back at the camera, this woman that I heard from this morning, she said that that's what makes it worse to her, is that the police officer stared back into the camera and didn't flinch or hide his face or shame. He didn't feel any shame. He felt like it was okay. And that, when a person stops feeling shame on their treachery, it makes it even scarier. It makes it even worse, right? Because
every villain is the hero of their own story.
Right. And so the full conviction of that is but anyone that's fully convinced, anyone with full conviction, 100% conviction that they're right, is dangerous, right? So one other thing that I wanted to say is that you mentioned it, and you were absolutely right. And you said that it was almost like they're going after the peaceful protesters and not the ones that are actually doing the violence. And here's a reason why I think that not all of us ought to protest immediately, is because this is very reminiscent of Venezuela, right? In Venezuela, when these protests occur, there's documentaries now of guys that I see in these videos, bro, and they remind me of me. They remind me of you, because they were going to be astrophysicists. They were going to be so-and-so. And then all of a sudden the country went to shit in Venezuela. And all of a sudden they had to become protesters because it became so vicious and so bad that their main job was to be protesting because they wanted the government to change. But the government, so long as it can hold on and say, hey, democracy, 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 what do you do? Democracy is based on numbers. So what do you do? What do you do? Where do you start destroying that movement? At the leadership, right? So when this first wave of protesters that went out there, bro, I'm sure that there was lots of scholars, lots of smart people, lots of people that are freaking very, very, fluent in all this stuff, all this anger, the people with the most passion, probably with the most means to do it too. And now there's been minimum, at least, I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but minimum of 4,000 people that have been arrested. There's probably been anywhere from there. I bet you there's been probably maybe 5,000. I'm willing to bet on that, but it's probably been maybe less that have been injured or hurt by the police officers, and yet we look at this and what is the purpose of that? Like you said, why are they going after the most peaceful ones, the ones who are sitting there literally taking a knee and chanting, I love you, Jesus Christ, this and that, we're brothers, and then you see them literally break apart and go get him specifically, mace him.
Can I voice an opinion on that?
Go
because
ahead.
I believe I actually have an answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe it's because the government is keenly aware that peace and unity and love, the unity that comes from love, is so much more powerful than the unity that comes from fear.
Yeah.
Because the unity that comes from fear only lasts as long as the fear is there. Once the fear is gone, the reason for unity is gone. And I mean, look at all the people who've been assassinated over the years, in the past, whose message was unity and love and coming together. If I'm not mistaken, and again, this is a pretty far out. It's not that far out. If I'm not mistaken, though, in civil court, the U.S. government was found complicit in the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, if I'm not mistaken. Right. Not in criminal court. Right. The same thing with OJ, essentially. In criminal, they didn't have enough evidence, but in civil court, they made a very compelling argument, and the U.S. government was found complicit in the death of Martin Luther King. And so, like right there, you have a clear-cut example of somebody whose message was peace, love, unity, and tolerance. He referred, Dr. King referred to everybody as brothers and sisters, and because that message was so powerful, the establishment, whether they had a direct hand in it or whether it was, they were just, complicit, like they knew it was going to happen and didn't do anything about it. Regardless, clearly you see the kinds of people that they do want to, you see what the government really is threatened by at the end of the day.
And it's on purpose, right? Because here's the thing is that, like, so Mike, to quote Mike, not an eternal Mike, he said to me once, he told me a story about when he was doing combat sports, and that he had a teacher, he had a professor, and it was combat sports, and it was full contact, and he went into the first match and he lost, and then he went into the second match and he was, he did okay, he won barely. Finally, his instructor, his master, went over to him, and I think he was German or something, and he says, "Oh, Michael, you're so nice. Michael, you're such a nice guy. You're such a good guy." And he said, "What? What do you mean?" He says, "You're so nice, Michael. When you go out there and you fight, you're so considerate. You're so sweet to your enemy." He says, "That's why everybody beats you." He says, "You're so nice." He says, "Stop being so goddamn nice." He says, "and win." Right? And when he did that, he said, "Okay." So he went out there and he didn't hesitate on whether it would hurt the person's feelings to win, because he knew that he had the superior skill, and he knew that he was right. And when you can do that, you can go ahead and strike with all your might and not hold back and not be afraid of what would happen, right? Because that's one thing, right? Is that you keep saying that not only you, but it's like everybody, is that we need to be that. Oh, Tucker Carlson, he might be a sweet human being. We're so nice. You're so nice. You're so nice. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I these people, they are like Trump. He said it once that he's going to be on a war footing, right? He said that he was going to be on a war footing against the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi. Now, do you take him at his word, or do you keep play fighting? Do you take him at his word, or do you keep fighting with boxing gloves on? You know what I'm saying? And it's just and it's not about us falling to their level. It's just that when we have the blow, when we have the body blow, when we have Donald Trump, hanging out with Epstein, and when we have Donald Trump, who controls the federal government, the prison system, and all of a sudden, supposedly, Jeffrey Epstein kills himself, and there's nobody questioning, like, yo, why did you let the guy who could have spilled the beans on you kill himself? Like, how is that possible? You know what I mean? Like, and yet we oh no, that's hey man, Trump likes to fuck little boys according to the court documents that are right there. Oh, we don't know if they're real or not. We don't know if they've been proven or not. Oh, okay, but you want to tell me about emails? So you know what I'm saying? Like, we're too nice when so Donald Trump was having sex with a porn star for $130,000 when he could have done it for less. But foolishly he didn't. And to top it off, he did it while he was married to his wife who was pregnant at the moment. Okay? And it's like, that's too personal. That's too that's too mean. But yet you guys want to tell me about Monica Lewinsky, and you guys want to tell me that Epstein and Clinton is a Clinton killer and all these other, pathetic things. But yet You guys want to be really nice? I don't know. Let's give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt. I don't know if he's friends with the Russians, even though it said, in the documents where Robert Mueller is saying that, there's been systematic efforts and that Donald Trump, called it out. And then everyone, when he says, oh, it was sarcasm, we believe him. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's the same thing with this guy, Tucker Carlson. Like, you can't, when you become that much of a shill, it doesn't matter anymore whether you at the core of you have a kindness. You're willing to destroy minds. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like that kind of a person is irresponsible and dangerous.
And I love that you brought this up, because it's one of those things I barely get to talk about with people, and that's that what really is at the heart of all the issues that we experience today, not only just with racism, but with government and with our personal relationships and with our relationships with other countries. The real problem is you can kill the man, but the idea is still there. And that's the thing. Our great struggle against racism is not just against racist people, and that's the thing. To me, I watched it. Like I talked to you about it. I watched a clip the other day where from Russell Brand's old show where he brought on the Westboro Baptist Church. And without going into a big tangent about that, his whole goal in bringing them on was basically, I believe, to show that these people are suffer from an ideological sickness. It's not just that they're bad people. In fact, in their own twisted way, they actually really do care. That's why they're out there protesting funerals and holding up all these terrible slogans. It's because they really believe that their version of God, their version of the divine entity of the universe, really is going to send these people to hell because of the things that they've done. And like I said, when it comes right down to it, our war that we are fighting right now is the movements that are happening right now. It's targeted very much at the people, and the thing is, history has shown us you can destroy your enemies. That's fine, but if you don't destroy the ideas, then the ideas will eventually reemerge. And to me, that's where, like when you were saying, like, oh, the boxer, for example, or the full contact sport, when the guy was like, oh, you are so nice. Like, you're being too nice, essentially, was the general overarching message. And then he ended up going and kicking ass. And that's because he needed to understand, because sports is a microcosm, obviously. It's a controlled arena with a specific goal in mind. And when I look at the anger that's happening right now, it reminds me that we could my inner anarchist is poking out a little bit, but we could drag every single one of the politicians who we don't agree with and all the corporations, we could drag them all out into the street and shoot them, and for a time we would have some substance of change. But the problem is, those ideas still exist because those ideas did not start. The racism did not start with Donald Trump. Racism did not start with the police. Arguably, I would say it didn't even start with white people. Racism started the moment that humanity looked at each other, and based on skin color, we decided that we were each different from each other, and we focused on those differences. The idea of race, for example, have you ever actually Googled what racism means? It's very interesting, because what they say is that racism is the belief that there are specific characteristics inherent to your ethnicity, where you were born and stuff. And if you look at that definition of racism, for example, all the terrible things that Donald Trump said about our Hispanic neighbors down south, that is going back to the memetics. It's an idea. It's an idea that the same thing with the idea of the failed state. We are at war with ideas, and you cannot defeat ideas with fire. You cannot defeat ideas with bullets. And I think that's the general message that I would want to get across to anybody who was listening, is that, we always forget that it's like the Buddha said, all we are in the Dharmapada and the Twin Verses. He said, he opens it by saying, all we are is the result of what we have thought. And it's those thoughts that I believe that we're at war with, not just the people. It's the thought. And if we don't have the unity and love at some point along the line to say, hey man, what you're doing, is fucked. It's fucked. It's not that you're a bad person, but you have a sickness of perspective, and that sickness is causing pain, not just for you, but it's spreading like a disease. You're spreading this pain to everybody, and until we're able to address that, I think, and really because that's, to me, is the real battlefield. This is a battlefield of the mind, and until we start fighting on that battlefield, I don't know if we're ever going to really make any lasting change. Sorry for the tangent.
No, it's just that my metaphor with the fighting was that in the same way when you could apply it to soccer, you could apply it to any sport that is played and that is competitive, and where you have to win, right? And the reality is for example, every sport, like in politics is a sport. Like you said, everybody has always lied. Everybody has always, lavished the truth, and therefore Donald Trump's not that different. But the difference is that the insidiousness of the lies, the amount of the lies is nowhere near comparable to anybody that has ever come before him or has ever even existed, not even close. You know what I mean? Like that is just, and when people say that, like, because I hear this from a lot of liberals though, like Jimmy Dore and other guys, they say, oh, Donald Trump is not the disease, he's a symptom of the disease. Oh, Donald Trump was not racism didn't exist, before him. Racism existed before him. And I wonder why we try to, and this is what I mean. Like, we're too nice, in the sense of, obviously we're not going to shoot him, Mike. I would never say shoot or kill or maim.
I wasn't implying that you would.
So what we're saying is that in the middle of a fight, when we're in the middle of a battle, right, and he is threatening with, caging up children at the border and losing thousands of them, arresting 4,000 people, letting hundreds of thousands of Americans die, of all these things, and yet we still want to make up like, oh, I don't know, man, he might have a good reasoning behind him. It feels like it's too nice. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I mean, is that we're not playing patty cakes with this guy. This guy, if he had the ability to, he would get rid of me and my family. This guy, if he had the ability to, unlike the Westboro Baptist Church, who you talked about, and they hold no power. They're a fringe group, right? And so what is America? We protect minorities, right? We that means that even the crazy people have to have the ability to think they're crazy things, but that doesn't mean and that's why they've been allowed to flourish for so long, right? But the thing is, though, is that when those people, if those people are the ones that are writing the laws, and this is where the court case of the Affordable Care Act versus I can't remember what it is, but it's basically about contraception and against Hobby Lobby, and it basically says that if the employer that is hiring you has a sincere belief that abortion is wrong and that you shouldn't be able to get the contraceptive pill, that he can be able to choose that your medical plan doesn't pay for your products of that nature, right? So that's because it's a sincere belief that the person has. It's a sincerely held religious belief, and therefore that means that he should be protected. But no, because as an employer, that doesn't necessarily mean that person has to agree with the employer on the religious beliefs, right? Everybody has their individuality. So I want to go ahead and just add to that, because I don't necessarily believe that we should fight them with weapons. I believe that we are being too nice with our words. I believe that a guy who, I mean, come on, man, you've heard him read that poem about calling us a vicious snake. You know, about calling Latinos vicious snakes. Who it's like, why did you let me in? You know, oh, you shut up, you silly woman. You knew I was a snake. You know, like he's reading these things like to brainwash them to hate us, to hate Mexicans, to hate Latinos, to to consider blacks as something else other than part of the group. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that's why it's like it's so weird to me when I hear people try to like kind of like comb it in a way, like because he really he's not like So the jokes that were on South Park, or the joke of like, oh, when they pull their eyes back and they pretend that they're Asian, or when they wear the sombreros and they think that they're Mexican, that's not offensive. That's just not offensive. I think that everybody understands that that's not offensive, and they should understand it. But the reality is that's also been warped, right? But that's not offensive. That's not racist. What's racist is the systemic abuse of things like that. It's when all of a sudden the police officers are half of them are in the KKK, right? And we're over here saying, hey man, maybe we should take a look at the officers. No, fire all their asses, hire new ones with bachelor's degrees or something, but they don't, because they need to protect it. And it's so, and that's what I mean is like I is that when we're in the middle of a sport, or when you're playing something, you're playing a match of soccer or a video game, the point is to try to win. And then how seriously you take that goal, that's going to determine on whether you do or don't. Because if all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is just Xbox, who cares? Well, yeah, okay, then you're never going to win, and that's just the reality.
And mm-hmm. I think if I could try to summarize my point on the subject, it would be that it's not that I'm opposed to the idea of protesting and taking it to the streets and really showing people this is how we feel. No, I'm not opposed to those ideas.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying with debate.
No, I'm not saying it for you. I'm not. This isn't me trying to be like, oh, you're implying that. No, I'm not saying that. I just wanted to summarize it for my own sake. That what I am saying is that Donald Trump is he is a problem. And an avatar for everything in the country currently that he's an enemy of peace, love, and tolerance, and unfortunately we have to vote him out. We have to unite as a people, mm-hmm. and make the united stand together and say enough's enough. We don't want this anymore.
Because Mike, it would be so convenient for you.
My general point though is that I just don't want people to forget that the real battleground is still ideas.
Yes.
Just because Donald Trump goes away, people have a tendency that once the physical problem has been dealt with, let's say he gets voted out of office and all that stuff, and people will be like, yeah, woo, the struggle's over. But no, the struggle isn't over. And we have to remember that. We have to remember that there is still an ideological battleground that we still are waging a fight on, a war on. And the weapon that the idea of racism wields against us is the illusion of division. Mm-hmm. And we have to remember that if we're really going to defeat racism, that we have to do that with love and unity.
Yep.
Because, anyways.
No, so that's why I think this podcast of you and me, having these frank talks, these serious conversations about where it is that we think that we see the danger, right? And the thing is like I was just saying, it could be so simple and so convenient for a guy like Michael to go and be like, oh yeah, I'm a full MAGA guy, and he would be embraced wholeheartedly, and he wouldn't have to think, and he could just shut off his brain and take the easy route. But instead, no, he's chosen to go ahead and try to think of his whole life and say, hey, how have I been privileged? How have I been disadvantaged? What can I do different? What can I, yes, it exists, but at the same time, understanding that you too have struggles of your own. You know what I mean? As we all do, because I understand too, as a minority, right? That sometimes when we try to hero talk up our our struggle, it's not to diminish white struggle. It's not to diminish the difficulties that white families have and face, and have to encounter. Because we it's a different kind of pain, but it's pain, and it's how you said, right? And so that's why it's so brave of you, and so that's why you're so critical, because you choose to think, and thinking is difficult nowadays. Feel this oversaturation of everything. And but yeah, so it's really interesting. I call it the virtuous cycle, right? Where we need people to start on our side. This is the recipe, in my opinion, to defeat, to annihilate with love, is to create content, to create poems, real poems. I needed my so-called college people to write poems and essays. I need people who supposedly studied law to go ahead and look into the laws that we can use to protect ourselves against these, so-called accusations of being looters and rioters. I need these people that are so-called, accountants, to go ahead and create a fund to go ahead and manage some money for the community. I need some of these so-called child therapist people who went to school for supposedly psychology, to find a way to talk it out with white folks and black folks, to try to go ahead and come up with a solution, and not just be like, oh no, I don't know. Because we need more content. We need more artwork. We need more songs of peace, of love, of unity, of diversity, right? We need to collaborate more, just like you and I are doing here. You know what I mean? Because if we shut ourselves up, if we self-censor, we will be like a kamikaze. We will end ourselves without anybody's need or assistance to help us do it.
Well, and also it's the going back to the whole idea of memetics.
Mm-hmm.
It's I mean, look, if you look at all the hate speech and things that look how powerful some of those toxic ideas are,
Yeah.
and how they've spread. It's so important that people in any way, shape, or form voice their when you have those thoughts of love and unity.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be perceived, they may not be you'll never get 100% of people to agree
they
with
may
you.
get one or two likes and a few hearts,
but that
they
idea
might get none.
But it might change somebody's mind.
Yeah.
You never know. And that's what's so important, is that we can't stop trying to change people's minds on this.
For the better. Yeah, that's right. We can't quit. Like that's one thing that we have to keep up, and that we have to defeat the virtuous. We have to defeat the pessimistic, the defeatist, and indecisive mentality that they are trying to seduce the youth with.
Oh, and speaking of things that they're trying to make us forget about, I don't know if you're okay with the transition right now to this subject, but I mean, we still have COVID-19 out there. It hasn't gone away.
And you're right, though, the memetics of life. How is it that these memes are so fast, so quick, and they're like, hey, well, yes, all of a sudden, what did they say? What did they say? God darn it. They said that there were these memes saying that about COVID-19. Oh, I guess that the liberals don't think that it was fake. Okay, man. Nobody on any report, on any mainstream media source, nobody on any newspaper has, except for maybe the right-wing motherfuckers, have said that it is gone, that COVID is fake. Right now, everybody is just grinding their teeth and saying, let's hope.
No, the protesters are flying by the seat of their pants, and they're praying to God. They're scared shitless, I'm sure. That's why they're all wearing those face masks. It's there's a reason for that. It hasn't gone anywhere. I think it's just a difference about and again, not to be super partisan, but it's the difference between like, oh well, one side's going to go out and protest because they can't get haircuts, and the other side's out there protesting for the life a life that was snuffed out
for breath.
unjustly.
Yeah, dude,
Yeah.
it's so crazy. But you're absolutely right. Snuffed out. The American people have been subjected to a snuff film on live television and all throughout the webs. Things that typically are reserved for the dark web have just been introduced into the psyche of America for 8 or 9 minutes. That's a long time.
Yeah, and replayed over and over and over again, and it like I said,
and at the end of the day, it's a snuff film. Like you said, it's a snuff film.
No, it is definitely a trying time. So are we on the same page about coronavirus in that just out of curiosity's sake, because I'm under the impression that, like, okay, so we did social distancing and we slowed down the economy because we didn't want the hospitals to get overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And last I checked, I'm not aware of any giant hospital building programs that have expanded our medical system. So to me, it's like, okay, so what's changed, and how is it that we are, how that people say, well, the particularly the right says, oh, it's no big deal now, but I'm sitting here thinking, well, if the whole point of the social distancing was to slow down the spread so that hospitals didn't get overwhelmed, what's going to stop the hospitals from getting overwhelmed? I'm under the impression that we are going to end up shutting down again. And are you on the same page on that, or do we differ on that?
I think that so I remember when I first thought, my first prediction was 3 months. If best case scenario, 3 months and we're back to normal, baby. But turns out we have this moron who does nothing right, and we are in uncharted territory at this moment. I think at this moment it is really a survival of the fittest, almost, it seems like, because, like you said, it's the populace is so polarized, right? That half of the people are almost like cavalierly challenging a virus. They're saying, just come at me, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like they look forward to it. And the reality is, in my opinion, is that if and when it does happen to them and they do get it, I feel like it's, people will not ever fess up to it. And so in the sense that they will lie about feeling sick for as long as they possibly can, especially in the right wing, right? Because of the fact that they want to pretend like there's nothing happening, because and so even if we shut down again, even if the governors tried to, the other 50% would just keep pushing, and it's so. Donald Trump is the only one who could tell these guys, hey guys, please just stay indoors, just stop, like, because he has them so wound up that he could Donald Trump could go ahead and say, hey man, I want your girlfriend for the night, and they'd be like, yes sir, go ahead. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, and one day he could say the sky is blue, and the next he comes out, he says red, and they'll agree with him both times, and it's like, and that kind of power, it's I mean, it's something else. It's admirable. It is terrible but great, like Olive Andrews said. It's terrible but great, because if he really wanted to, with the snap of a finger, he could say, everyone wear your masks, and all of a sudden you would have Trump supporters wearing 2 masks and wearing the face shield, and they'd go out and they'd buy the gas masks that the military guys wear. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how much they believe. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, right now he is literally causing the wound. He's literally making the wound worse on purpose, it seems like. That's why Matt, you're absolutely right. What Matt has said, I hadn't really thought how powerful what he said is, but he doesn't try, and he doesn't even pretend to try. You know what I'm saying? Like he could be like, hey guys, just put on the mask. You know, for just for the doctors, just so that they calm down. Just put on the mask, guys. You know, I don't believe it either, but just put it on. You
Better
know?
safe than sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and even that would have been like Mattis said, pretending. But no, he doesn't even pretend. He divides. Like he said, he wants people to think, no, you wear a mask, you're stupid. You're a sheep. You're this, you know? And when it's totally the opposite. It's just so the imagination required to think of those things is a very used imagination.
I agree. I think that it's there politicians have this idea that like it's not okay to change my view based on new information, which is for a nation that says that we're so science oriented. The whole idea of science is that we know nothing and that we're still learning, and it's okay to change your position as long as it's a genuine position change. I mean, and I always admire people who, whether I agree with them or not, are at least ideologically consistent. And I mean, clearly Trump is aware of the virus. I mean, clearly it's not just he thinks that it's not a real thing. He's keenly aware that it's a real thing, and he says one thing to his followers and then he does another, and he just does that consistently every time. And it's like you said, it's crazy, because if you have a pulpit like he does and you have followers that support him through every scandal, through every crazy tragedy that has occurred so far, you could be using that pulpit to save lives, to unite people, and to make a difference. And yet he doesn't. And here we are in the ideological nightmare that comes from saying one thing and doing another.
My friends, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain a little. Number one, it's free. Two, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you've ever been looking for to make a podcast in one place. Go ahead and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
So like you were saying, his abuse of these mechanisms to finally finish it off on a positive note with at least an actionable step is, apart from all the content that we need to put out, apart from all the interactions that we need to keep up, is that we need to keep our mindset in check. So that means that we have to not drown in our sadness. We have to be aware of how we feel, because one of the things that is very important is that they will try to beat us down mentally, physically, to tire you, to wear down your stamina. But you can't allow it, because this is the story of the king applied to us, right? They're trying to convince us that we're sick. They're trying to convince us that all we do is argue with each other, when the reality is not that. The reality is that you and I agree on more than what we disagree on, big time. And that's the same that would happen with just about anybody else, right? And so we can't allow ourselves to get discouraged or to be defeatist, because that's what Donald Trump and his cronies want. Why would you? What would be a good recommendation for you to make sure that people stay, sane? Because it really is tiring on the mind, right? When someone is, trying to distort your reality so much. What would you say? How would you? Do you have any advice to people on how they can keep their psyche in check?
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's not going to be advice that everybody is going to want to take, but I do believe it would solve a lot of the issues, and that, of course, is meditation. It's not a very complicated thing to do. It's one of those things that it's more people the ideological barriers that people have against it are not as powerful as you think they are. Anybody can learn to meditate, and the whole thing of meditation is you let go of yourself, and for just a brief amount of time, and it's a very powerful experience, because you're reminded of how everything is connected. Every one of us, all human beings, whether they're black, they're white, Hispanic, Russian, Chinese, you're reminded of the unity that we all share this house called the Earth. And I can't remember exactly who said it. It was a big science guy, but he said that a house divided amongst itself cannot stand. And
That's my boy Abraham Lincoln.
well, no, it might have been him too, but there was also, I can't remember, not Bob Saget, it's Bob something, I can't remember his last name. He was big into stars and astronomy. He was basically Neil deGrasse Tyson before Neil deGrasse Tyson. But yeah, a house divided amongst and you know what, honestly, in the words of Abraham Lincoln too, that's even better, honestly, because a house divided amongst itself cannot stand. And I think that the sooner we get around to embracing this idea that regardless of race and everything, all these minor differences, the sooner we get around to embracing this idea of we are one people on one planet, the healthier that we'll be. And honestly, if you're so opposed to meditation that you won't do that, then the next best thing would be take a walk, go find some nature. Find some place where there are none of these ideas, where it's just you alone with the world. And hopefully somewhere along the way you realize that you are the world, that we are the world, and we can make a difference. That would be.
And
I
would add to that by doing that, you can re-energize yourself to be ready to go back into the conveyor belt of shit fight.
To go back into to stand in front of the shit train, and it's basically you feed your
and be brave.
It's food for your mind, basically. Healthy body and healthy mind. You need both in order to take down an opponent like this.
And would you go ahead and you're gonna send me a link? You were saying about one of the Russell Brand meditation techniques that he really admired.
Yes, it was amazing. It was one of the best meditations I've ever had, and I was somebody who I struggled with meditation for a long time, and I had found methods that worked for me and helped me kind of limp along in the process. But it wasn't until recently when I really saw that. But I'll definitely send you a link, and if you want to post it in the, if you want to advertise it on the podcast, but I definitely think it would help everybody.
Tell me good
out.
Things about it. Why not?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, man. I mean,
we, like I said, we need to go ahead and keep developing this content and making sure that we keep fighting the good fight, because the reality is, Mike, is that if we don't do it, who else will?
Exactly.
And we hope to meet more people that want to join, because we are more than welcoming to more voices, to more vibrations of positivity.
I wish we could find
unity
somebody
to come together.
I wish we could find somebody who was like severely ideologically opposed to both of us, and bring them on. Just so we could really have a serious conversation about these ideas and these, these perspectives. I wish we could. It's one thing I've. Sorry, I don't want to. I know we're closing the show, but it's one thing I do admire. I do admire that about Bill Maher's show, is that he's a very polarizing figure. He's a little too polarizing for me, but he's not afraid to bring on people that disagree with him, and it's God. Can you imagine that discussion? Like if we had somebody, like a real hardcore Trump supporter on here to be able to
all I'm saying is that I'm not going to be too nice well, debatably, of course. but that's the way it has to be, steel against steel sharpens it.
Well,
So
you don't win debates by handing out cookies.
That's true. It's not hopscotch. But anyways, thanks so much if you're still listening. If you stuck with us, I hope that we introduced you to some interesting perspectives. And go ahead and do some research because everybody's mind is a universe, and there might be something that we're missing. There might be a perspective that we're not catching, and this is why if you have an idea, message us, and maybe we can get you on the podcast. Whether it's to counter us or to embolden us or to give us a different perspective. This is the Virtuous American. Mike, I'll catch you around. We'll see you at the next round.
Take care, man.
Thanks for joining me.